there's two really big categories of KPIs that when we work with our advisors, we really try to hone in on a couple key points. So revenue strength is really important, particularly for firms that might be just a book of business or a small practice. Things that are related to the revenue strength are really important. So these are basic things like how much recurring revenue do you have versus non-recurring revenue? What's the average revenue growth rate of the company or the net new client growth rate? So those are some examples of revenue strength KPIs. These should be really important to an external partner that might be a source of an M&A transaction for you. If you're thinking about an external sale, these should be the primary focus. If you're not looking at internal succession as your ultimate exit plan. If you are looking at internal succession, you might be a little bit more interested in what we call enterprise strength KPIs. So if you want to build a business that is sustainable, enduring, that's going to continue after its founder retires, you need to look at these enterprise strengths of the firm. What are those things that make it a business and not just a book of business with a transportable revenue stream? So things like, the number of owners and employees and professionals, and what are some of the ratios that are associated with that? Like what's the profit per professional or per owner? What's the expense or revenue per client? How much of our revenue are we spending on marketing and tech? And we're going to get into those numbers in a lot more detail here in a moment, because those are going to be some keys to our insights for today. Now, depending on where you're at in your life cycle, I talked about if you've got a book of business versus a practice or a business. So kind of depending on where you're at might influence what are the most important KPIs for you to focus on. So for a sole proprietor, just understanding how much revenue do I have? How much of that is recurring revenue? What's the growth rate of that? Those are going to be really relevant and important for a sole proprietor. As your business begins to grow, maybe you've added a couple other advisors, you've got some staff. Maybe you're even thinking about bringing someone else into the ownership circle with you. You're going to pay more attention to things like what is the client affluence level of each client? What's our average expense percentage? How much revenue are we generating per client? What's our expense per client? Those things become a little bit more important at the practice level. Finally, when you get to the level of being what we might call an enterprise, where you've got a number of people in the ownership circle, you're starting to be a larger firm that's capable of being really successful in doing M&A. You're going to want to start to evaluate things like your EBITDA, your EBOC, your earnings before owner's compensation, various expense ratios, compensation ratios. What's it cost you to acquire a new client? Those are some of those KPIs that might be more relevant at that enterprise level that might not be quite as important at the sole proprietor level.